Hey, it's Starzy, and today we are going to talk about all the books that I have rated 5 stars on Goodreads. Yes, I am filming this the same day as I did the 1 and 2 star reads, and again, the idea originally came from Ness at Wonder Ness. And yes, my coffee is kind of lukewarm. What do I need to say? In terms of my rating, I don't give books 5 stars very often. I have to really love something. A lot of books that I have really enjoyed, I gave 4 stars for one reason or another, whether I didn't think it was objectively a great book or whether I just didn't connect with it in that way where I was like, yes, 5 stars. So yeah, I don't necessarily give them out that often, and also there are things I read years ago that I gave 5 stars that looking back at now, I don't know whether I would if I read that today, you know? But all the same, we're gonna have a look through and talk about the things on my Goodreads that I have rated 5 stars. So starting off, we have The International Day of the Girl by Jessica D. Humphries. This is something I read an arc of this year. It is one of those children's books that has kind of information along with an illustration. It's one of those formatted ones, which I actually really love. The illustrations in this are beautiful, and it also is a very diverse book with stories from girls around the world, and also talks about what the International Day of the Girl is and why it exists. And I think it is a lovely read. That would also be kind of valuable in classrooms and stuff, so. Right, then I have Bunny by Mona Awad. This is something that I just read, kind of like a horror type novel, really weird, and warning for animal sacrifice if that's something that bothers you. That definitely exists. I don't know, man. I like weird, I guess. This book was freaking weird, but I liked the way it was written, and it had just some interesting vibes and also it had kind of cult vibes, but also I kind of really want the outfits of the bunnies. If you've read this and the descriptions of what each of the girls in the bunny group wears, I want their outfits. And yeah. I then have The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, a romance with an autistic woman kind of navigating love properly for the first time and to kind of learn how to be intimate properly. She hires an escort and stuff happens, and it was just really sweet. Stardust, the BBC dramatization by Neil Gaiman. This was great because it was a full cast dramatization, so that was lovely, and it's also just a story in general that it's very much kind of fairy tale vibes, and you've got these 2 different stories related to princes competing for the throne, and then also this guy who's trying to catch a star for a woman he wants to marry. Fairy tale vibes, full cast is great, yes. Monstrous, both Volume 1 and Volume 2. I've talked about before how much I love this graphic novel series. Again, it's weird horror type stuff, but the art is beautiful and there's an interesting world to explore and try and work out what exactly is going on a lot of the time. And Kipper is the most precious character ever, and there's talking cats, and it's just a lot of fun and very pretty. Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Ames, my favourite book I read last year, a humorous adult fantasy following a group of old men who have reunited to try and save the daughter of one of them, because they were once in a band, and the bands in this world are kind of modelled off our modern rock bands, but in this world bands are mercenary bands, and so they're these old guys getting back together to try and help out one of their daughters, and there's a lot of great banter and humour, and at times there were some jokes that fell flat for me just because they felt very young boy jokes, you know, which doesn't necessarily jive with me. I've never been a young boy, but overall it was fun, funny, felt like an off the rails D&D campaign, lots of kind of connections to that music world. I just really liked all the characters, especially the wizard character, it's just a mess. Dread Nation by Justina Island, alternative history YA involving zombies set just after the American Civil War, and it has a lot of comments on history and society, especially the treatment of black people. And we have a bisexual main character, and we also have an asexual, aromantic character, and it's just really interesting, and we love a badass main character and zombies. Why am I so white? I look like enough of a ghost as it is. We don't need this. Whatever, we're just gonna live with it, and I'm gonna be like glowing by the time the filter's over this. It's fine. Talking to My Country by Stan Grant. This is a non-fiction. Stan Grant is an Indigenous Australian journalist, and this book was prompted by an Indigenous Australian footballer who received a lot of negative comments thrown out from him from the crowd, and things kind of blew up. I can't remember what year that was, and then Stan Grant wrote an essay kind of article piece on that, and then he ended up extending it out into this book, and it's a mix of kind of real history and also his own personal history, and just kind of generally giving you insight into the history and treatment of Aboriginal people in Australia. So, valuable read. Animal Farm by George Orwell. It's funny because I had a George Orwell book in my books I really didn't like video, but I did say Animal Farm's one of my favorites. It's interesting comment on society featuring animals, and it's one of the only books. There are two books that had a death in them that made me immediately have to put the book down and talk to someone about it. Animal Farm was one of them. I'm never going to be over that. And Dark Dawn was the other one, where at one point I put the book down and immediately called my boyfriend, being like, so yeah, I don't care how old that book is, I'm never getting over that. The Last Wish by, how do we say this guy's name? No, I'm not trying. The first book in the Witcher series, well, chronologically, it's short stories. I really enjoyed these stories. I especially loved their links to fairy tales. Somehow I had never realized before just how heavy the fairy tale influence was on these stories. Like, some of the stories are like direct fairy tale retellings, and then often you'll see other little things that are just kind of hints at them, and I loved that. Spell. I really am glowing. This is not going to be a good look, but I can't be bothered moving to find somewhere. Like, why? Why? Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell. This is a fantasy. The reason I enjoyed it so much was the audiobook. The narrator did lots of different voices, and it was a lot of fun to listen to. And there were some really interesting characters, like, oh, what's his name? What's the, like, little animal's name? I don't remember, but he needs to calm down. Then I have the entire Nevernight trilogy. So Nevernight, God's Grave, and Dark Dawn. Nevernight was my favourite out of the three, but I really enjoyed all of them. Badass female main character, bisexual representation, assassins, Roman-inspired world, humour, sassy shadow cat, and I actually really loved the footnotes too, and the whole voice that comes across in the narrator. Yeah, and I really like the kind of over-the-top writing style. Saga Book 1, so I'm not getting it out, it's over there, but it's like it's a big hardcover bind-up of some of Saga. Saga is one of my favourite comic book series, sci-fi, family, diverse, bloody. There's a lot going on in Saga. There's a lot. I haven't read it in a while. I'm definitely not up to date, but I was reading it years ago. Like years ago, I had a digital subscription, and I was reading them as they came out. But yeah, I really love Saga. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of interesting characters, and the art is beautiful, and there's a lot going on. Burn for Me by Alona Andrews. I've spoken about this. I feel like Burn for Me has become the book that I've spoken about the most at this point this year. And I'm not sorry, okay? I'm not sorry. Urban fantasy. I really like the main character. I really like the family dynamics. I know I keep talking about how I don't like those hyper-masculine characters, and the main character in this is kind of that. And honestly, some of the later books in the series I don't like as much because that kind of controlling behavior comes out. But in this first book, like, I just enjoy their banter, and it's my exception, I guess. It's the exception. You are the only exception. Yeah, you are. Air of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. This is the only Sarah J. Maas book I think that I have ever given 5 stars. And it was my favourite book in the Throne of Glass series, and I feel like it went downhill from there. Because see, one of the things that I loved so much about Air of Fire was the strong friendship between a man and a woman that was portrayed in this book. The platonic friendship. And that was so beautiful to see, because you like never see that in YA stories, and there always has to be something romantic. And I was like, yes, platonic friendship, and I loved it. And then, well, obviously that didn't last, did it? And I wasn't surprised that it didn't last, but I was disappointed, okay? I was disappointed, and especially when you start adding like the whole like soulmatey type thing, I'm never gonna be over it, okay? Yeah, that series went downhill for me, and I forced myself to finish it at the end. But the year I read Air of Fire was my favourite book I'd read that year. Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. Would I give that 5 stars now? I'm not sure. I talked about 2 Rainbow Rowell books in the things I have given 1 or 2 stars. I think, here's the thing, contemporaries like this they're often just easy reads, and I find them very easy and quick to get through, and they can just be a bit of fun. And I think the thing with Fangirl it was one of those contemporaries I've read that I related to the most, because the main character is geeky, and she has anxiety, and she's going to university. And I was a geeky teenager with anxiety who went to university, right? So I think there were a lot of things in here that I related to, and that's why I ended up rating it so highly, and it was something I read in one sitting because it was an easy, quick read, right? I don't know, man. I don't know. Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book in the Infernal Devices series. Which, come on, Shadowhunters, if you don't know about Shadowhunters and you're in the book community, where the hell have you been? I remember when I read the first one, I was kind of like, meh, about it. But then I remember the second one was where I really started to feel invested in the story. So that's why I would have given it 5 stars, just out of enjoyment and investment. I will say, though, that I do not like Will, and I have never liked Will, and the second book did not make me like Will. Like, I knew when I read the first book and hated him that there was going to be some kind of reason for it, because like I was reading it after I'd already seen people talking about it, even though this was many years ago. But after the second book, still didn't like him. I don't like him, and that's my unpopular opinion for the day. And that is actually everything that I have ever given 5 stars on Goodreads. Are there other things that I would potentially rate 5 stars now? Possibly. But that's where we are. As I said, I do not give things 5 stars very often, and particularly before the past couple of years. And there's also a lot of books that I never gave a rating to, or especially before the past couple of years, majority of the books I read, I feel like I didn't ever rate. So there aren't necessarily a lot there, but yeah. Anyway, that's it. That is everything that I've ever rated 5 stars on Goodreads. I don't know, man. I don't know. I still haven't finished this coffee. It is definitely cold now. 2 videos down, we have cold coffee. Talking to myself for this long, I'm going loopy, clearly. Leave a pink heart emoji if you have stayed with me this long, and tell me some of your 5-star reads, or what you think of these ones. Yeah, stay safe. Starzy out.